Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem, welcome back to today's Daf Yomi, YOMA Tesvav. We are 13 lines from the top of the Amid. Now, our Gemara discussed a contradiction between our Mishnah which described the Kohen Gadol during the 7 days of Prisha. Mishnah tells us the Kohen Gadol was involved somewhat in the Avodah and the Beis HaMikdash in order to train him in and prepare him for Yom Kippur. The Mishnah listed various karbonis avodas that the Kohen Gadol was involved with: Zerek Sadam, Makdiris Akteris, and Meiteves Haneris. Let's discuss this sequence, the order of the avodas. Says the Gemara, apparently from our Mishnah we see Kteris precedes Neris. Now, Meiteves Haneris doesn't mean lighting the menorah. In the morning they would actually clean out the menorah. That was called Hatovas Haneris. And in the afternoon they would actually light the menorah, Hadlokas Haneris. Mishnah tells us it's first Kteris and then Hatovas Haneris in the morning. In a Mishnah later on, in the second parak, we find the order reversed. First, you take care of cleaning the nears, and then you bring the Kteris. We have a stira. How do we resolve the stira? Says the Gemara, Rav Papa Amar, Lo Kasher, Harabonon Habashol. These Mishnahs reflect different shittas. You see, the pasuk says, "V'yikter olav Aaron Kteris samim ba'boiker be'itivois haneres yaktirena." And we discussed yesterday. All agree, Hatavas haneres, the cleansing process of the haneres in the menorah, took place in two phases. It was split into two parts. First, they would clean out 5 cups, then interrupt that with some sort of avodah, and then resume cleaning the remaining 2 neros in the menorah. So Hatavas haneres was split into 2 parts, and the reason is because the pasuk uses a double term, Ba'boiker, to tell us Chalkei l'shnei bukarim, split it up. So all agree that it was split into 2. The question is what we put in the middle. According to the Rabbanon, you would have the Kteris taking place in the middle. 5 neiros cleaned, Kteris, and then the final 2 neiros. Abba Shol maintains the Dam HaTamid was placed right in the middle of the Hatavas HaNeiros. The Kteris, that was after you completed the entire cleansing process. Look at the pasuk. Be'tivas haneres yaktirena. Kteris comes after Hatavas haneres. So conclusion, Lefi the Rabbanon, you cleaned 5, you brought Kteris, then you cleaned the remaining 2. According to Abba Shol, you cleaned 5. The Dam HaTamid was Nizrak on the Mizbech at that point. Then you went back, finished the last 2 cups of the menorah, cleaned them out, and proceeded with Kteris. Says Rav Papa, that's a pshat in the apparent contradiction. Both Mishnahs here and in the second parak are discussing the final phase of the Hatavas Haneres, the final 2 cups that were cleaned out. We're not discussing the first 5. We discuss the main, the Gemara Avoida, the conclusion of the process, which is the last 2 cases. Mishnah over here, discussing the Kohen Gadol before Yom Kippur, reflects Shitas Rabbanon. It was 5 cups, Kteris, and then 2 cups. That's why the Mishnah says Kteris and then Neris. The Kteris and then the final 2 Neris. Whereas the Mishnah later on in the second parak reflects Shitas Abba Shol, that it was 5, Dam Tamid, 2 Neris, and then Kteris. That's what the Mishnah says. It was Neris and Kteris. The last 2 Neris followed by Kteris. Says the Gemara, B'mayu kimtel masnisin dehacha. Okay, so according to who did we establish our Mishnah? K'Rabbanon. That it's following Rabbanon. And that's why it's Kteris and then Neris. Pious Kavashol. The Mishnah later on, which speaks about the Payasas, the pious, the lottery that they would conduct in order to determine who's going to be Zoicha to do the Avodas. That Mishnah, which speaks about Neris and then Kteris, Ka'Abba Shol. Okay, it's following Abba Shol. If that's the case, Moseifa. Let's proceed to the next set of Mishnayos here, actually in the third parak, discussing the Seder Yom Kippurim as follows. Hevilus HaTamid, it presented the Kohen Gadol with a carbon Tamid. Krotzai, he did the Shechita, but not completely. Krotzai is a lashon of he cut it mostly. So most of the shechita was done by him. It was a proper shechita. You don't have to do the entire, you don't have to cut all the simanim through and through to be mekayim shechita. As long as you did roiv was enough. And the Rashash points out that the word krotze means it's mostly cut. Umerik acher shechita al yadeh. Another kain stepped right in there and completed the job on his behalf. Umerik means he completed the cutting the shechita al yadeh on behalf of the kain gadol. The kain gadol had to hurry up because he was the one that not only did the shechita but also the kabbalas dam. So he had to hurry to grab it clean, do the kabbalas hadam on that same carbon that he just shechted. So he left the remaining part of the shechita for the other kain. And then the Mishnah continues. Nichnas lahakteres akteres. So he went to do the kteres ulaheiteves haneros, to clean out the menorah. Kteres and then neros. Whose shita is this? It must be the Rabban. Asan the Rabbanon. This must be following the Rabbanon. Rabbanon who say it was 5 kteres and then 2. So kteres and neros is referring to the last 2, and it's following shitas Rabbanon. 1 second. Mishnah over here, Mishnah number 1, let's call it 1, 2, and 3. Mishnah Bayas is number 1. Then we have Mishnah number 2 that we mentioned earlier, which reverses the order. And then we just mentioned the third Mishnah later on, which goes back to the same order as Mishnah number 1. Kteres and Neris. So Mishnah number 1, Kteres Neris. Mishnah number 3, Kteres and Neris. Both Rabbanon. And the middle Mishnah reverses it. Neris and Kteres, like Abashol. How does that work? Reisha v'sefer Rabbanon. The first and last Mishnahs are the Rabbanon. Umitzias Abashol. The middle one's Abashol. As Rashi explains, the problem is because Seder Yoma is like one Mishnah. It's all one sequence. It's one order. Meaning, once we begin discussing the Seder Avodah Yom Kippurim, later on, the beginning of the second parak, from there on, it's one sequence. It's one set of events. It's kind of hard to believe that one Mishnah reflects one Shita, the other Mishnah reflects a different Shita. So how does this work? Amalach Rav Papa responds, yeah. Evidently, that's the way you have to interpret the Mishnah is incorrect. Reisha v'sefer Rabbanon, Mishnah number 1 and 3 are the Rabbanon, who hold Teres and then Neres. Umitzias Abashol, middle Mishnah is Abashol, who holds Neres Kteres. Why does he hold Neres Kteres? As we mentioned, because according to him, you cleaned out 5, you brought Dama Tamid, which was the mafsek between the 5 and the 2, then you completed the 2, and then you brought the Kteres. So this is Shitas Rav Papa, who once again maintains that all 3 Mishnahs are describing the Atovas HaNeros with respect to the last 2 Neros, the final phase of the Atova process. Why do we find the Seder going back and forth? Simply because it's reflecting different Shitas. Now, if you remember from yesterday, we had another way to explain, to answer the stira. That was Abaye's approach. Abaye maintained that all Mishnayos are in line with Shitas Rabbanon, who hold 5 Kteres and then 2. Our Mishnah, Mishnah number 1, is speaking about the last 2 Neres. That's why it's Kteres and Neres. The next Mishnah is speaking about the first 5 Neres, because we're describing the Seder Avodah Yom Kippurim. So you begin with the first 5. So that's why it's 5 and then Kteres, Neres and Kteres. And then the next Mishnah apparently is proceeding to the last 2. That's why it's Kteres and then Neres. That was Abaye's approach. All Mishnahs are reflecting the same Shita Rabbanon. It was 5 Kteres and 2. Depends which Neres we're speaking about. That's why we find the discrepancy in the sequence. Because if it's speaking about the first 5, then it's Neres Kteres. It's the last 2, then it's Kteres Neres. Says the Gemara Bishla Abaye le'omak Rav Papa. We understand why Abaye did not like Rav Papa's approach. Well, it's difficult, right? Reisha v'sefer Rabbanon Mitzias Abashol, to say the Reisha, the Mishnah number 1, Mishnah number 3 is Rabbanon, and the middle one, Mishnah number 2 is Abashol. That's difficult. He didn't want to establish it in that way. So we understand why Abaye preferred to keep away from Rav Papa's approach. Ela Rav Papa my time le'omak Abaye. Why didn't Rav Papa follow Abaye's interpretation? Once again, Abaye holds all Mishnahs reflect Shittas Rabbanon, who hold that it was 5 Kteres and then 2. Our Mishnah, Mishnah number 1, is reflecting the Hatava of the last two Neiros. That's why it's Keteris Neiros. The next Mishnah is describing the Atava of the first 5 Neiros. That's why it's Neiros and Keteris. What's wrong with that approach? Why didn't Rav Papa follow Abai's approach? I'll tell you. Tana Bereisha Ha'atava Shtei Neiros. It's difficult, it's strange to assume that first the Tana begins describing the Atava of the 2 Neiros, which was actually a second phase, and then proceeds in the next Mishnah describing the Atava of the first 5. So you start at the end and go back to the beginning. That's why he did not like this approach. What does Abaye do with that question? You're right. The Mishnah in our parak right here, Nafidal Amar Aleph, it's not discussing the Seder Avodah. It's just Aruyim Ba'alma. It's just giving instructions. Rui Ba'alma Kahud Kamayri. The Mishnah is simply handing out instructions. Point simply is that the Kohen Gadol shall be involved in some sort of avodas before Yom Kippur to train him in. We're not being makpid or particular about the sequence, about the seder of how we're listing the avodas. Whereas later on, Perak Beis, Perak Gimel, then we get serious. Then it's actually describing the exact seder of avodah Yom Kippur. So we begin anew. We begin with the 5, and then Keteris, and then the next Mishnah discusses the last 2, which is Keteris and Neiros. Tesis actually learns that Rui Ba'alma Kamer means that why is it that our Mishnah describing the Kohen Gadol before Yom Kippur is merely focusing on the last 2 Neiros? He says because that was the Gemar of the Atava, that was the last phase of the Atava, and the Kohen Gadol wouldn't bother getting involved in the first phase. He came for the grand finale. The other 5, he let the other Kohen, he instructed his underlings to take care of it. He let them take care of it, and he came for the main part, for the Gemar, which is the last 2, and that's what's described in our Mishnah. The Kohen Gadol does Atava on the last 2, in which case it's Keteris and then Neiros, because remember it was 5, Keteris and 2. So Keteris and Neiros works out well. Okay, so we're finished with the contradiction between the Mishnahs. We have 2 approaches. We have Abaye, we have Rav Papa. Continues Gemara Gufa. We learned earlier regarding the Korban Tamid. Korban Tamid bought twice daily was actually an oila. Now, how was the dam oila applied to the Mizbeach? It was done like a zrika from the kli. Shtaim sheim arba. Pasuk says you meant to be zerek al Mizbeach saviv, around the Mizbeach. The word zvachim learns it doesn't mean actually to paint a line around the Mizbeach. Rather, throw it in a way in which it will relate to all 4 sides of the Mizbeach. How do you do that? You apply it twice. On one corner, and then on the corner diagonally across. Now when you apply dam to a corner, it splatters, it spreads in both directions, along one wall, along the other wall. So you've covered 2 walls, then you go over to the other corner, you do the same there. Give a zrika, in which case the dam splatters and spreads along the 2 walls, and you've covered all 4 walls. That's how we would apply the dam oila. Chatas was different. By chatas you had to do a specific application per wall. You actually put the dam up on the corners, up on top, on the protruding corners, but you applied it in a way in which you actually applied it to all 4 sides. You did it separately. You did 4 matanis. So by chatas it was a separate, distinct matana, 1 per side, whereas by oila it was a combined application. You did it just twice, 1 on this corner, 1 on the opposing corner, in which case the dam by default arrives to all 4 sides. But it was a relatively indirect application. Now the Oila Satamid was an Oila. According to the Chachamim, the Oila process would apply there as well. So you put the dam on one corner, and then you went over to the diagonal corner across, and did the same thing there. Shtayim. So you had 2 applications. Sheheim Arba, which end up affecting all 4 sides, end up spreading to 4 sides. That was Shittas Tanakama. And that's what we learned yesterday. Boloi, Gufa, Boloi, Lekerem, Mizrachas Tzvainis. So just for illustrative purposes, let's say this would be the Marav. That's how you enter the Beis HaMikdash, coming towards the Kodesh HaKadoshim, which was here. And here you have the Mizbeach. So my Gemara is the Mizbeach. So you have the kevesh on the Durham side, going off the side. And the Brisa says like this: Boloi lekeren mizraches tzvainis. The kohen would take the kli with the dam and come to the mizrach tzafan corner. So if this was mizrach tzafan was here. He would do a zrika there. The dam would spread to both sides. Noisen mizraches tzvainis. Okay. Then he goes over to the corner diagonally across from that corner. So he'd go over to Maravis Draimis. Maravis Draimis was here. Nois Maravis Draimis, he would apply the Zrika there to get both sides. So this was Shtayim Shem Arba. On two opposing corners. Do the Zrika in a way where the dam spreads to both walls, which in case you covered all four sides. Why? Kama, the Talmud was an ordinary oila, which required this procedure. Rabbi Shimon Isha Mitzvah Mishane b'Talmud. He held that Talmud isn't your typical oila. You deviate somewhat from the standard typical oila procedure. You have to add a chatos element to it. Right? A chatos is the one that has a separate matanis, separate, distinct, split matanis. You apply that to the oila as well. But you can't turn it into a chatas. You make a combined process. So the Oilas HaTamid, according to Shimon Isha Mitzvah, was a hybrid carbon, was sort of an oila chatas combination when it comes to the process of applying the dam. How is that? Baloi leker mizrachas tzvainis. So he approaches the mizrach tzafin corner. Noisim mizrachas tzvainis. He does a zrika right on that corner, and the dam spreads to mizrach and tzafin. So this would be like an oila. It's a single application with a double result. But then he goes over to Maravis Draimis. He comes around to Maravis Draimis. Over there, he doesn't do it as a combined zrika. Noisen Marava, v'achach noisen Draima. Here he splits it. He puts some dam on the Marav and some on the Dar. So as far as the end destination of the dam, it's really the same as if you would have done it as an oila, but the application is different. He's doing an enhanced application. He's doing a more direct nisina sadam, which is typical of chatas. Instead of doing it as one combined zrika, which will end up by default on both sides of the corner, on both walls, he does a more miyuchad, a more directed, specific, designated application of dam, one on either side. And this is somewhat reminiscent of a chatas, which also gets a more direct nisina sadam. My time at the Reb Shimon Isha Mitzvah. What is the pshat here? If it's an oila, why do we deviate? Why do we include a chatas element here? Amar Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Chad Debei Rabbi Yana. He said the name of one of the fellows in Rabbi Yana's Beis Medrash. Amar Kra, the pasuk says like this: On Rosh Chodesh you bring a chatas. Usir izim echad chatas Hashem al oilas hatamed ye'asa v'niskei. We learn from here that there will be a chatas element attached, attributed to the oila. Oila, really it's an oila. V'amarachmana avid b'masi chatas. Torah mandates that you add some sort of chatas element to the oila process. Says Rashi, off to the right, the chatas Hashem al oilas hatamid. Masa chatas al oilas hatamid. You want to add a chatas element to this oila. What does it mean? V'achatas tu'una pisuk matanis. V'achatas, you apply the dam separately. Shari dam itan al abakronis. You put dam on each one of the four corners on top of the mizbech, so it's separate, distinct applications. Af oilas hatamid yesh ba pisuk matanis. Likewise, in oilas hatamid, it's not your typical oila. You have some sort of splitting of matanis there. Lo yeshabitlu mimenu masa oila. We don't mean that we're totally cancelling the oila process from it. Of course it's an oila. Both processes will apply to the oila. We make a joint process. Explains the Gemara. How are you going to do that? It's either or. Very simple. First, he does a combined nasina, right in the corner. He does zrika and allows the dam to spread to both sides, like an oila. Then he goes to the next corner, the one which is diagonally across, and he goes shtayim. He makes two separate, distinct nesines, shein shtayim, which spread on two corners, on two walls. And this is Rebbe Nisna v'chatas, k'masei chatas. This way he covers both ends. He has an oila element and a chatas element. Now the Gemara will ask, why do we do it this way? Why don't we do it differently? Why do you split the process? Which is nor this, nor that. It's not a complete oil, not a complete chatas. Why don't you just do the same process twice? Repeat it twice. Do a complete oil process. Then repeat the process again like a chatas. Why don't you do shtayim shein dal like an oil? Go to one corner, do a zrika. Go to the corner across, do another zrika like a oil. And then repeat the process like a chatas. Va'arba, and do 4 separate nesines, shein arba, which will result on the go on the 4 sides, the 4 kronis, go on the 4 corners on top, k'masei chatas, like a chatas. So why is it that we're splitting the process into 2? Says the Gemara, "Metzinu domim shemachaprin v'choizin machaprin." We can't do that. We never find such a concept. Do a nesinas dam completely, bring a kapara, and then do another kapara. It doesn't work. We don't repeat the kapara twice. That's why we can't do a complete oila process and then repeat it with a complete chatas process. Okay, but your suggestion isn't much better. What do we find? A nesinas dam which is half, like an oila and half from nisna v'chatas. It's either this or that. What do we find in hybrid nesina of dam? Ela akarchach hikishna kasev. Apparently, you must say this is a chiddush. This is a unique phenomenon. Torah combines them, puts together chatos with the oila. Okay, if that's the case, then my suggestion can work as well. Hachanami bal karchan hikishna kasev. The Torah combines the two things. It's a chatos and oila. So why can't you do the whole procedure of an oila and then do the whole procedure of a chatas? Why are you going ahead and doing it in a way which really is not accomplishing much? It's nor this nor that. Hasam pisik matanas ba'almi. Says the Gemara, you're not really deviating much from the oila process, because really you're positioning yourself at the right place, at the corner. This corner, and then the other corner across. That's as far as the person. As far as the dam's destination, it's really the same destination. It's just an enhanced application. You're just doing it more directly. So really not much change from your typical oila. So really it's an oila. It's a process that applies to an oila, just a bit enhanced. In fact, you're enhancing it, doesn't ruin the oila. And that's what the pasuk here is being mechadash to us. Do an enhanced oila process. As far as the dam's end destination remains the same, it's just a more direct application. That's fine. As opposed to repeating the process, the complete process twice. Doing an oila process and then doing another chatas process, that won't fly. Because that's going to be mavatal, the oila process. You can't do the same thing twice. Whether it's mavatal or because we just don't find such a concept to go do a process over and over again. Says him, okay, I'll go with that. That it's really a split maton of an oila, because the destination is the same. Dam arrived at the same place. It's just a question of combining it or splitting it, doing it as one zrika combined on the corner, or staying at the corner and doing it separately on either side. Fine, but why are you splitting it? To accommodate chatas. Now keep in mind, dam chatas was applied to the upper part of the mizbeach. Mizbeach had a chuta sikra going around it, this line right in the middle of the mizbeach, which was the halfway point of the height of mizbeach. Sometimes dam was applied on top, some on bottom. The oil was on bottom, the chatas was on top. Now the second set, in our case, is meant to accommodate the chatas. Right? First he approaches the corner, does a zrika as an oila, combines zrika, and then he goes to the other corner and does a split in the sin like a chatas. As far as location, we should require that the first step, which is reflecting the oila, should be done on the bottom of the mizbeach as an oila. The second step, reflecting a chatas, should be on top like a chatas. We don't find that the brisa requires that. It actually seems that we don't do that. The only deviation that we do is this split as opposed to combined, as opposed to as far as location is concerned. They're both going to be in the same location on the lower portion of the mizbeach. Why? V'neisav achas sheishtayim lamata. The first application, which is achas sheishtayim, he throws it at the corner and allows it to spread. That should be done lamata, on the lower portion of the mizbeach, k'masa oila, to reflect the masa oila. As opposed to the second phase, shtayim shem shtayim, when he pushes the other corner and does a split zrika, two separate zrikas, which end up on both sides of that corner, that should be done lamala, at the upper portion of the mizbeach, k'masa chantas, to reflect the chantas. Why don't we do that? Lo matzino damim shechetzi lamala v'chetzi lamata. We never find one process of nesinas dam, of zrika, of azov, whatever it is, to have a split destination, part on top, part on bottom. We don't do that. So we don't find a precedent to that concept, and we don't do it here as well. We do it all on bottom, like an oila. Just, we enhance it a bit. Second phase of that zrika will be a more direct application. Okay, v'lo, is that so? We don't find a split destination. That's not. Here's a remeno. Achas lamala v'sheva lamata. On Yom Kippur, when the kohen brought the dam into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, he would apply the dam as follows. He did a hazah, 1 upward and 7 downward. Now the Gemara at this point figures, Pasuk says he does this hazah towards the urn, towards the kaparis. Now, the urn had this lid, right? It had the kaparis. The Gemara assumes that the kaparis, since it was a tefach thick, we draw a virtual line running through the middle of it. There's the upper half and the lower half of that kaparis. And below that we have the urn. We're assuming that when the Mishnah says it does achas lamala v'sheva lamata, it means he directed the achas lamala towards the upper half of the kaparis, and the sheva lamata landed on the lower portion of that kaparis. Here we go. We find a split destination. He's a memenu achas lamala v'sheva lamata. Answers the Gemara, no, that's not what happened. Kimatzlif. It was like a person whipping, as she says, like the shliach bezin who applied the malchus. And as Rashi explains, sure, he began on top, achas lamala, but then he successively, went down the line. It was 1, 2, 3, achas lamala. Sheva lamata means it was one beneath it, one lower, a straight line. So it's not like some were directed at the upper portion of the kaparis and some at the lower. By default, it so happens that if you start on top and you go down the line, some will be up on top and some lower down. But this wasn't a split destination, it was just a straight line, starting from the top, ending on bottom. My kematzlev, what exactly is this kematzlev? Machvir of Yehuda demonstrated kamin gedana, like the person, like the shliach bezdin, who was applying the malchus, the whips, the lashes, where according to Rashi it appears they would go down the line, I guess, not to inflict undue harm. We would start on top and then alternate, go down the line, hit them in different places. Taisus actually learns a bit differently than Rashi. He says Kamen Gedana doesn't mean that they went down the line, they changed locations, start on top and then went down the line. It means that actually everything ended at the same place. Everything was directed at the same point, but it's as far as the positioning of the hand, of the finger, that the Mishnah describes this as being up and this was being down. The end location of the dam was the same spot on the kaparis. The achas lamala simply means that he would face his finger upward when doing the hazah, and sheva lamata means it would be facing downward. So it's just a question of positioning himself and his finger, but not as far as the destination, the location of the dam on the kaparis. And therefore, says the we don't find the precedent to such a thing of taking dam and applying it partially on top, partially on bottom. Really, we don't find a precedent to this concept. When he came out of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, he took the dam and he did hazah al tahorish al mizbeach. Which mizbeach is this? the Mizbech Hazav, the Mizbech HaPnimi, right outside the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So you applied 7 Hazois al Tahorish HaMizbech. What does that mean? My love, should we not assume? Palgei the Mizbech. Al Tahor means on the halfway point of the Mizbech. Kedei Amr Inches, people say, Tahar Tihara. When people are describing lunchtime, midday, they refer to it as Tahar Tihara. Duhu Palga de YOMA, which is the halfway point of the day. Like Rashi, like Tzoharayim. Tihara is Aramaic for Tzoharayim. Why is it called Tzoharayim? It means light, the brightest portion of the day. Like by Noach, we have Tzoyar Tasel Teva, create a source of light. So Tzoharayim, that's midday, the brightest part of the day, and Taharish Mizbeach means the mid portion of the Mizbeach. So you have the wall of the Mizbeach, the midpoint is Taharish Mizbeach. And that's where he applied the Hazos Hadam. Now, if that's the case, it's inevitable that some dam will end up on the top part of the Mizbeach and some on the bottom. When you aim for the middle, some will get to the top, some to the bottom. It just happens. So, if that's the case, then you have some dam on top, some on bottom. A split location, we have a precedent to that concept. Tesis disagrees. It seems like Tesis doesn't hold that's called a split destination. It's just, he's aiming for the middle. Well, some will end up a little bit higher, some a bit lower. That's not called splitting your destination. Rather, it's because they placed some dam up on the kronis of the Mizbeach. So you had some corners on top, which had dam, and then you put on the side as well. That's called lamala, kronis, and the side of the Mizbeach is called lamat. In any case, we have a raya that dam can have multiple destinations. That's not what taharish Mizbeach means. It doesn't mean the midpoint on the sidewall. Agufi Mizbeach. Tahar means the top surface of the Mizbeach, which was cleaned off from ashes. And that's why it's called Taharish Mizbeach. The clear part of the sky. So Taharish Mizbeach is referring to the top surface of the Mizbeach, which was cleared of its ashes, and it's all on top. And indeed, we don't find any place where there was one matana hazah zrika process applied to a dam, we will find some dam on top and some on bottom. And therefore, getting back to our oilas atamid / chatas, according to Shimon Isha Mitzvah, you encompass also a chatas element into the oilah process. So on one corner it's done combined, the other corner split, but it's all on the lower portion of the Mizbeach, like an oilah, because bottom line is it's an oilah. We don't want to go ahead and introduce a new concept, do some on bottom, some on top. We don't find any precedent for such a procedure. Says the Gemara, but why is it that in the sequence of events, Rav Shimon Isha Mitzvah holds, you begin with that combined Zrika. So you approach the Mizrach Tzvainis and do a combined Zrika, and then you make your way around the Mizbeach to Maravas Draimus, and you do a separate split Nesina. Why do you start with the Oila aspect and conclude with the Chatas element, and why not in the reverse? Why do you begin with the Oila element, the Chatas, and then you apply the Chatas procedure? Why not the other way around? Nesiv Bereisha the Chatas. First begin with the Chatas process, do that split Nesina, Vada Nesiv the Oila, and then do the Oila. Why? Why would I think Chatas precedes Oila? We find in Gemara Zvachim, when one has an Oila and a Chatas, he first brings the Chatas to clear the air, and then he brings the Oila. So perhaps here as well, first bring the Chatas, and then the Oila. Says the Markivan the Oila he called Bereisha. Since at the end of the day, what is this really? It's an Oilas Hatamid. Yeah, you have a Chatas element incorporated within it, but really it's an Oila. Given the Oila he called Bereisha, the Oila rightfully takes center stage, it precedes the Chatas. Okay. Now, what about this sequence? What about the way we're going around the Mizbeach? So again, we have the Mizrach, we have Ma'ariv on the way to Kodesh HaKadoshim, we have the Kevesh, that's the Doron, and the Mishnah tells us, the Brisa tells us, we go around the Mizbeach counterclockwise. Right? The first Nesinas Dam is Mizrach Tzafin, like an Oila. You make your way around the Mizbeach clockwise, all the way to Ma'ariv Doron. We do that split Nesina. Why do we do it in that fashion? Umayishna the yoiv mizrachis svainis. Umaravas draimis. Why is it that we go around all the way to Mizrach Tzafin, which is quite a walk, apply dam there, and then over to the corner diagonally across, which is Maravas draimis? Why don't we skip the first corner? Nesiv draimis mizrachis. Why don't we first put the dam by Dara Mizrach? V'hadar tzvainis maravas. Then make your way around the Mizbeach. So the corner which is diagonally across, Tzafin Marav. V'hadar tzvainis maravas. Says where you can't put dam on Mizrach Dara. The corner which is on your right, when you go up to the Mizbeach with the Kevesh, Mizrach Dara, it's ineligible for Nesina of dam oila. You know why? Amri oila to Ula Yisoid. We learn from a pasuk, Al Yisoid Mizbach Oila, that when you apply the dam of Oila, it has to be over the Yisoid. It has to be at a place where there is a Yisoid, the foundation of the Mizbeach, protruding from the Mizbeach. This Yisoid went all around the bottom of the Mizbeach, except for on two sides, Darim and Mizrach. We looked at this earlier in the Masechta because Mizbeach was meant to be exclusively positioned on Chelkoi Shel Binyamin, as promised to him by Yaakov Avinu and the Brachas, Parshas Vayechi. B'achsanta Yisbnei Midbecha, the Targum says there, it has to be on his territory. And as we learned earlier, there was some complication there because Yehuda's territory protruded a bit into Binyamin. So there's a strip of land on the Mizrach, running along the Mizrach of the Mizbeach and the Darim of the Mizbeach, almost until the corner of Marav, and Mizrach almost until the corner of Tzafin, and that strip belonged to Yehuda, in which case the Mizbeach could not have been positioned there, therefore they had to cut away. They could not put a Yisoid over there. The Yisoid is part of the Mizbeach, and the Mizbeach cannot be placed on Yehuda's territory. So that leaves this corner of Mizrach Darim without a Yisoid, and ineligible for Nesina's dam oil. Again, says the more Amri, the Bnei Yeshiva responded, you know why we don't put the dam on the corner of Mizrach Darim? Oila to a Yisoid. Oila requires a Yisoid, but Keren, Dramis Mizrachas, lo have a Yisoid. That corner did not have a Yisoid. Fine, so that corner is out. And it only leaves us with three corners that had Yisoid. Mizrach Darim, Marav Tzafin, and Marav Darim. But since we have to place the dam on two opposing corners, diagonally opposed from each other, you're only left with two. Mizrach Tzafin and Marav Darim, which are balachsim from each other, in order to cover the entire Mizbeach with just two Nesinas. So we understand that. But why in this order? Why does the Brisa say the first dam is on Mizrach Tzafin, and then you go all the way around to Marav Darim? Maybe the other way around. The first Nesinas dam will be Marav Darim, and the last one, Mizrach Tzafin. Why is it that he first applies dam to Mizrach Tzafin, V'hadar, and only then Marav Straimis? What about the other way? Neisiv V'reisha Marav Straimis. Let him first do the Zrika on Marav Darim, V'hadar Mizrach Tzafin, and then go over to Mizrach Tzafin. The answer is Kivan Amar, since we learned. Called Pinan Sha'ata Poina. Whenever the Kohen makes a turn, makes his way around the area of the Beis HaMikdash for the sake of avoid of karbonis, which direction should he turn? Lo yu el derech yamin lemizrach. He meant to make a right turn. Rashi says the word lemizrach really is just part of the formula. It doesn't really apply to Al Gemara. It applies in the Gemara Zvachim. The point here is you meant to go to your right. So, for instance, when you climb up the kevesh to the mizbeach from the Darim, which is the entry point of the mizbeach, as Rashi calls it, it's panav shel mizbeach, like entering a home. So we view the Mizbeach, we sort of approach the Mizbeach initially from Darim. That's the way we begin relating to the Mizbeach, as though you're entering the home. And then from there, you meant to make a right. Called Pina Shatapoina La Yu Eladerchimin. Right is Darim Mizrach. That's how you end up on the Darim Mizrach corner. But it's not Roy for Dam, doesn't have Yisoid. So you proceed to the next corner. It's as though you're facing the Mizbeach along, so you're going to your right. He's facing the Mizbeach, right is Mizrach Darim, then he makes that turn again facing the Mizbeach, and he has to go to his right. His right will take him to the next corner, Mizrach Tzafon, which is basically counterclockwise. And that's going to be the first eligible corner, places it there. And of course, he makes his way around the Mizbeach again, all the way to the other side, to the far side, Mizrach, Mariv, Dara. Says Bereisha Bahu Poga. If he has to go to the right, the first one that he'll encounter, first eligible corner, first place where he could potentially put his dam, is Mizrach Tzafon. He goes up the kever, so to speak, makes it right, and then another right over to Mizrach Tzafon is going to be the first stop. Okay, so that explains, the Brisa answers all the kashas. One more thing. Rabbi Shimon Ish HaMishpah tells us, we learn from this pasuk that the Oilas HaTamid is different than your typical oil. You meant to incorporate a chatas element as well into that oil. How do you know? Maybe the pasuk is telling us to incorporate an oil element in the chatas. Rahman. How do you know it's regarding the oil? Torah says, Avid ba masa chatas. Include in the oil process a chatas element, as we mentioned. Vidilma, maybe it's the other way around. B'chatas hudukam rachmana. It's regarding the chatas that the Torah tells us, Avid ba masa oil, incorporating the chatas, an oil element. Pasuk says, Usir izim echad lechatas lashem al oilas hatamid. How do you know to lash the chatas onto the tamid? Maybe lash the tamid onto the chatas. And the chatas here is different than your typical chatas. A chatas rish chodesh has to be done differently. It has to include an oil element to it as well. How do you know which way to go? You can't suggest that. It says, izim echad chatas lashem al oilas hatamid. What's the point of al oilas hatamid? To tell us, Ma'ik Amar Achmana, or the Torah telling us, Midi the chatas. The chatas element, Shadia oila toa, so to speak, onto the oil. Attribute the chatas element to the oil as well. Al oilas hatamid. It doesn't say Malvad oilas hatamid, as Rashi points out, like it says elsewhere. You bring the chatas in addition to the oil. It says Al oilas hatamid. Latch it on, attach, attribute the chatas element to the oil as well. This is not your typical oil. You must include a chatas aspect there. And that relates to the second Zrika of Dam, which was done in a split fashion, reminiscent of Chatas, as we described in great length. Continues the Gemara, Tanan Hassam, we learned in the Mishnah and Talmud. Amar lahem ha-mamuna. Rashi learns the Mamuna was the Sgan Kohen Gadol, second in command, vice president. Tosfos disagrees, brings Rayas. Sgan Kohen Gadol, which was the backup Kohen Gadol, he wasn't involved in this Mishnah. Rather, the Mamuna was simply describing the fellow in charge. So various functions in the Beis HaMikdash were taking care of various people, various Memunim, and this is the Memuna describing the Mishnah. In any case, the Mishnah says, Amar Memuna, the Memuna called out to them, Tzuvi, Viu, go out and bring me a lamb, Lishkas Beis Atloim, from the lamb room, from the animal room, where there were some carbones, some animals, pre-inspected carbones, intended for the carbon tamid. Where was this Lishkas Atloim situated? V'haloi, Rashi says V'haloi is like V'arei, behold, meaning this is how it was. V'haloi lishkas atloim hoisa b'meksoya tzvonius maros. Now Rashi explains that there was a huge room called Lishkas Beis HaMoiked. Why was it called Beis HaMoiked? A place of fire, because they had a constant, an ongoing bonfire in that room to keep the Kohanim warm. They used to walk around the cold stone floors, barefoot. So there was a fire, a furnace, meant to warm up the Kohanim. That was a Lishkas Beis HaMoed, a large, unroofed room. Now, at its four corners, there was some subdivisions, sub-rooms, 4 Lishkas. One of those chambers was called Lishkas Atlaim. Where was it situated? Lishkas Atlaim, Hoysa b'Meksoya, on the corner, Tzvonius Maros, the Tzafon Marav corner of the Lishkas Beis HaMoed. So suppose my Gemara is a Lishkas Beis HaMoed. The Tzafon Marav would be right here. That's where the Lishkas Atlaim was. Continues the Mishnah. V'arba Lishkas HaYisham. There were actually 4 rooms there, on the 4 corners. Achas Lishkas Atlaim, as we just mentioned. V'achas Lishkas HaChaysamas, where they kept the tickets. As we learned in Masechus Shkolim, you would purchase a ticket for for nesachim supplies, for flour, oil, for your carbon. So that's where they kept the tickets. V'achas lishka b'samoykid. The third room was called lishka b'samoykid. It was a mini fire there, perhaps like a pilot fire to keep a backup fire just in case. And finally, va'achas lishka she'osim b'lechem hapanim. The fourth room, that's where they baked lechem hapanim. So according to this Mishnah, which is the Mishnah Meseches Tamid, where was lishkas hatloim? Sfoinis maravs, right here. Raminu. Now we're going to have a kasha from Mishnah in Meseches Midos, which describes lishkas hatloim as being not in Saf and Marav, rather in Dorei Mizrach, a totally different area. In Marav Dorei, instead of Marav Tzaf and Marav Dorei. Arba l'shakas hoyle beis hamoykid. This beis hamoykid had 4 corners, 4 chambers. Kekatonis hapsuchos l'trakel. We're reminiscent of small rooms which are open to a large room with traklin. Shtayim hakodesh, u'shtayim b'chol. Now, the beis hamoykid was interesting. It was situated halfway in the beis hamikdash proper, and half of it was protruding out. It had no kedusha. So the 2 lishka is situated in the inner part of the lishka beis hamoykid were kodesh, and 2 rooms on the outer part were chol. Shtayim hakodesh, u'shtayim b'chol. V'rashi pispesin, and these wooden poles, whatever, were tipping out, were protruding from the walls, right at the halfway point. Mavdilin ben kodesh l'chol, that delineated the border between kodesh and chol. What were the rooms functioning for? What was their designation? Ma'ravas deraimis he hoisa lishkas tale carbon. Ma'rav Durham corner, that was the one where they placed the carbonis. So instead of Ma'rav Tzafan, as mentioned in the Mishnah and Talmud, here we have a Mishnah which says it's Ma'rav Durham on the other side. The Mishnah continues. Deraimis mizrachis. So the next corner, Dar Mizrach, that's where they bake lechem hapanim. Mizrach Sfainis, what was the Mizrach Tzafin corner used for? Ba Gonzu Beis Hashmonai Avne Mizbeach. The Beis Hashmonai hid, they buried the stones of the Mizbeach, Sheshikzu Malchi Yovan. The Malchi Yovan, they desecrated, they brought Rabbi Yehuda on it. So they took apart, they dismantled the Mizbeach. Figured it was inappropriate to use the same mizbeach for karbonis, and they put it in shemus, they hid it on the ground in that corner. Tzfainis marabas. Finally, we have the 4th room, Boyarden L'beis HaTfilah, that was used as the entrance down to the basement, where they would go down to be toivel. Let's take a look at Rashi on top. Shekshiktu malchi yavan. What they do? Shektira le'al avodas kechav b'mikdash. The malchi yavan. They brought Rabbi Yehuda on it. In any case, Ketani Miyas. What's the point? Bottom line is, Belishkas Atloim, it says that room, Shubam Ravis Drivers. So the Mishnah tells us, where was Lishkas Atloim? Ketani Miyas, Belishkas Atloim, Shubam Ravis Drivers. It was the Marav Daram corner, instead of the way it's described in the previous Mishnah as being Marav Tzafin. Now it's interesting, Tosfos points out, aside from this question, we have another kasha as far as the designated functions of these rooms. Because in the first Mishnah we have them described as Lishkas Atloim, Lishkas Chaysamais, Beis HaMoykid, and Lechem Hapanim. And here we have Tloim and Lechem Hapanim, which is the same. We have another couple of designations which we didn't have earlier. The room which was used to hide the Avnei Mizbeach, and the room used to access the mikveh. How does that work? So it says that's not a kasha. We find many rooms and many kelim which had multiple functions in the Beis HaMikdash. So that's not really a kasha. 2 kelim come to mind, the magrefa and the teni. Magrefa was this rake, which the Mishnah describes as also being used as a signal to summon the I believe the Levim to come to Shira. So they had a double function. And the teni, which was a large pot, so to speak, used to haul away the ashes from the Mizbeach. And also we find in Mishnah Erevin that they would use the teni to cover over, they found some sort of tumah on the Beis HaMikdash, it was used as a lid. So Yeah, Kalim had multiple functions, and Lishkas had multiple functions. It was a multi-use room. That's not a kasha. The kasha is regarding location. Because when we speak about Lishkas Atlaim, the first Mishnah, it's in Tzaf and Meir. The next Mishnah, it's Daramar. Amrav Huna Man Tana Midas. Who is the author of the Mishnah Midas? Who's the man, the Amar of Mesechas Midas? Rabbi Yaakov. It's Rabbi Yaakov. The Snan, as we're going to see by the Shem tomorrow, in the upcoming Gemara, we're going to prove that Midas follows in line with his Shita. He held Lishkas Atlaim wasn't Daram Marav, whereas Mesechas Tamid, which is the previous Mishnah, reflects a different Shita, who placed the Lishkas Beis Atlaim on the other corner. Okay, time for a quick Chazara. We had a seeming stira between our Mishnah, which describes the various avodas performed by the Kohen Gadol. We had Keteris and then Neris, and later on the other Mishnahs we had the Neris and then Keteris, and the third Mishnah we had Keteris and Neris, back and forth. We had two ways to answer that stira. We discussed the Oilas HaTamid, where according to Tanakama was your typical Oila process. Shtaim Shem Arba, the Zrika on both corners, opposite corners, that's it. According to Reb Shimon Ish HaMizpah, we learn from a pasuk that we add a chatas element to an oila as well. So even though it's an oila, but it's an oila satamid, which has this unique phenomenon, that it was this combined zrika process. On one corner you apply it as a combined zrika, on the other corner you split the nesina. As far as destination, the dam ended in the same place, but it was a more direct nesina. Apparently he holds that doesn't negate the oila process, whereas Tanakama apparently learns it does. You can't have it both ways. It's either or. We went through all the different options that could theoretically have been done here, and we explained why we chose this option over all the other ones. We explained why we began with the Oila aspect, because the fact is this is an Oila. We explained why we skipped over the Mizrach Darim corner, there was no Yisai there. We explained why we went counterclockwise, because you meant to go to your right when it comes to Avodah. That concluded the discussion regarding the Oila Satam. And then we discussed the Lishkas Hatloim, which contained the animals prepared for the carbon. And there was a stira. In Mishnah Tamid, we have it situated on the Marav Tzafin corner of Lishkas Beis HaMoiked. Mishnah Midas places it Marav Dar. The Gemara concludes these Mishnahs reflect two different Manda Amram. Mishnah in Midas reflects Shitas Rabbi Yaakov, as we're going to see in the upcoming Gemara. Be well, much hatzlachat.